Okay, in the first video I showed you how to form a bowl. So in this one I want to show you what happens when it's gotten a little bit drier. It goes from being the wet clay right out of the bag to what we call leather hard. Now leather hard is not bone dry. This for instance would be bone dry. You see how it's gotten much whiter. This still has some moisture in it, but it's no longer flexible. Okay, that is leather hard. The great thing about leather hard is it's a wonderful time for trimming. So for instance, right here we can see it's a little bit thicker here, thinner in some other spots. We can just take the loop tool, and when the clay was wet right out of the bag, it was a little bit difficult to trim because it was too easy to trim too much. Also hard to hold onto your piece without warping its look. Whereas when it's leather hard, it should keep its shape. That's easy. It should trim really nicely and really cleanly. And that's it. It's just a good time to do it. It's also a good time for doing carving. And I'll talk more about that on a later video for a later project. But you can see how this rim is now becoming just right. Even in here, I've got this little bit. I could just trim that a little bit just to shape it. Looking around here to see, is this smoothing in well? That kind of thing. Okay, so that's leather hard. Good time for trimming and for carving. Later on, you might get something that you've trimmed on it a little bit. Okay, and you could continue to trim more. It'll carve just fine. But what you can do with this piece now is you could use sandpaper. Whenever you're trimming, you should probably take either a paper plate, sheet of copy paper, or a piece of paper towel and collect up the shavings. Makes it a lot easier at cleanup time. Okay, so for instance, I've got this right here, and it's just as simple as this. Just going to use the sandpaper to sand this thing smooth. Any little fingerprints, any little pock marks. See, so this is pretty good, right? That's not bad, but it's not perfect. And even though it doesn't look too bad in this sort of raw clay form, when this is fired and when it's glazed with something shiny, all this little inconsistency is going to show up a lot, surprisingly much. So what we want to do is we want to get it as machine smooth as possible. That's where the sandpaper comes in. So I just merely sand and sand and sand. Basically until it is perfect. If I was to really look, I would still see where there's some low spots relative to the rest. And you know what? I would just sand that a little bit more. Doesn't take long. Inside, the outside, you can see the marks from where it was trimmed. Everywhere. I'd probably sand it all over the place because there's no place on it when it's just raw like this. It's probably perfect. Okay. Oftentimes I can use the sandpaper in conjunction with the loop tool. So I could take something down, looking at, let's say like right here for instance, and doing a little bit of trimming on it first, and then hitting it with the sandpaper. Because as quick as the sandpaper is, the loop tool is quicker. It can be very consistent. Just everywhere, until it's perfect. You know, I often give the example of tennis shoes. There might be a really nice pair of tennis shoes, but if the stitching wasn't just right, you probably wouldn't buy it. Okay, if for some reason you're sanding, and you lose the name on the bottom, you could just take a pencil or another tool and you can scribe it in. Now I say scribe because what I'm doing with my pencil here is actually digging down into the clay. I'm engraving that. I'm not counting on the darkness of the pencil to do it. No, I'm actually making a mark into the clay because all that pencil, that's going to get burned off. That's going to burn off. That's not going to last through the kiln. You can see all the bits of clay coming out there. I've actually marked that in. Okay, so very important. Name or initials, period number. Anyway, sand it all over, make it all good. The scraps of the clay, we can collect those up. So I'll have a bag or a box ready, probably a bag in a box actually. And so we'll have that out because this stuff is actually like super useful. And that's about it. I'm looking forward to the next project.